Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stephen and I'm a traditionally published fantasy author. Today I'm going to be talking about the different stages a book will normally go through once you get a traditional publishing deal. There was a bit of mystery around this. I knew some of it, I knew some of the terms before I actually got a book deal, but some of it I didn't really understand, so I'm just going to talk through the different stages so you understand what would normally happen. Before I do that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the art of compromise. One of the reasons I've heard for some people say that they don't want to go down the traditional publishing route and they prefer the self-publishing route is that they're unwilling to compromise on the vision of their book, and they're afraid that if they go the traditional publishing route that the story is going to dramatically change, and therefore in order to maintain artistic integrity or the vision or whatever their book, they're going to go traditional, they're not going to go traditional publishing, and they're going to go self-publishing. There are many reasons to self-publish a book. I'm considering some self-publishing options in the future for certain projects because they're not suitable for a traditional publishing route. So I have nothing against self-publishing. But if the only reason you're not looking at traditional publishing is that you're afraid that somehow your book is going to be changed so much that it's not going to be what you originally set out to do, then don't do that. That's a fallacy. That's a lie. That isn't true at all. Anytime you work on any project, anything creative, it will pass through a number of people's hands. If you look at other industries, whether it's TV or film, some of them have so many people working on a project that it can be quite different what ends up at the end. A book is a completely different sort of thing, especially with the way it works with traditional publishing. I'm going to talk through the different people that would normally work on a book. I'll understand a bit better what I'm talking about, but the short version is your vision of the book won't change. It'll have to be altered a little bit, only because to make it better, to make it a better version of what you were trying to do. Some cliches are true, and one of them is you can't see the wood for the trees. When you're working on a book by yourself, you're sort of this close to it, you've got your nose in the page and you're just focused on it. Editors, agents, these are people who professionally look at books every day. That's all they do, that's their job. So when my agent first read my book, she was able to stand back and see what I was trying to do and say, okay, this needs work and this needs work, not I'm going to change the book and go in a completely different way and this is what I think your book should be. She looked at what I was trying to do and she helped with the clarity of vision. Equally with my editor, I can talk about this now because the book has been out for 5-6 years whenever you're watching this. My first book, Battle Mage, it's focused around a war, but the actual themes is all about power, how different people respond to power, those who crave it, those who don't and end up having power, how do they cope with it, and those who just have power thrust upon them and they just have to struggle and try and get along, and whether it's political power or magical power or whatever it might be. And as you see in politics in the last few years, power corrupts and all this kind of stuff. It's very, very interesting. And that's what the vision of the book was. I had a side story about a serial killer in this first book. It was quite interesting. It was a nice little side thing. It added a bit of context to other things, but we ended up cutting that story because it didn't fit with the rest of the book. And that's not me compromising my vision. That's them looking and saying, okay, you've got lots of really good ideas, but this one doesn't fit with the overall picture of what you're trying to do. So we need to cull that. I ended up using that story or that element somewhere else and expanding it in another book where it worked a lot better. So the vision of my book was never compromised. So don't let that be an excuse for why you wouldn't look at traditional publishing. So the first stage and the first person who would work on your book would be an agent. In a previous video I've talked about how I found an agent and the long time it took me, and obviously that is an enormous step in itself, but that is just the beginning. Something I have to repeat many times to people when talking to them about being an author and a writer is that writing is absolutely a marathon. Even if you've got that first book out there and it's published, it's still a marathon. Things still move incredibly slowly, and equally trying to build an audience, build a fan base, all of that takes a lot of time. So once I got an agent, or if you get an agent, they'll look at your book and you'll then spend some time working on it to get it ready, because they want it to be the best version of what you've produced before they can send it out to publishers. I worked on my first book for a year but from speaking to other authors, I know that this can vary in time. It can be from 1 year, 2 years, some cases even 4 years to get this book ready. Obviously, the agent has seen something in the work and they think that it's something special, there's something that they really like and they want to champion, but they want to make it the best version so that when the editor reads it for the first time, they're absolutely blown away and they love it. So the first stage is you work on it with an agent. I did it 2 or 3 times over the course of a year, and once I got done a few revisions, she said, okay, now I think it's ready. The second person who will work on your book will be an editor. When your book goes out on submission, this is the most nerve-wracking part of the whole process. It'll go out to one or several editors at publishers. They will then read the book. They're often the commissioning editor is what they call, because there might be more than one at a publisher. But what that means is they receive submissions sent to them only by agents. Very few publishers have an open door policy where you can just send it in. Sometimes they open it up that you can, so you have to watch their websites and social media for that kind of thing, but most of the time they only accept submissions from an agent. So the agent will obviously tell them that this is coming, they kind of warm them up and let them know they've got an interesting book, and then when it's ready they send it out to the editor. The editor will then read the book, and if they like it, they then have to sell the book internally. So they may absolutely love it and want to take it on, but that's not where it ends. They then have to take it to their boss, to take it to sales, take it to finance, take it to marketing and PR, and look at where the book would sit on the shelf. Who is it similar to? Based upon that, how well do you think it would sell? Based upon that, what kind of an advance can they offer the author? And so they have lots of discussions, and this all starts from that one editor reading the book and saying, I love this, I want to take it forward. Assuming the editor that then takes your book on, you'll then spend some time, again, working with the editor to get it ready. This could be another year. In my case, it was 12 months. It might be longer, it might be shorter. It really depends on how many revisions you need to do. The other thing to think about is, even if your book is ready, it may not be published immediately, because publishers have lists. So they may have, I don't know, let's say they have 20 books. It's often a lot more than that. Let's say they have 20 books and they have 10 science fiction and 10 fantasy. You don't want to publish the 10 science fiction ones so close to each other, because a couple of them could be quite similar. And if you have 2 space operas coming out in the same month, then you're effectively splitting your own sales. People may buy one, they may buy both, but they may not. But if you space them out a lot further, then there might be a lot more interest. And equally, if you write a fantasy book about wizards and someone else has done that on the same list, it could be a very different story, but on the initial premise, someone will look at the front cover, it's got a wizard on or a person in a hood, and so is their book in some way. You don't want them on the shelf at exactly the same time launching. So the publisher will rearrange their list and say, okay, yours is going to come out in January, theirs is going to come out in June. That gives you a good 6 months of sales, people to get excited about your book and read it, and then we do it again for the next person. So there's a bit of adjustment of time there. Once your editor is happy with the book and you've done however many revisions with your editor, the next stage is it will go to a copy editor. This is a person who's usually external to the publisher, a freelancer who works full-time doing copy editing. And what they will do is do a detailed study of the book. This is something that they've not read before, they haven't seen your book, they're just given it by the publisher, by the editor, and told, this is what we want you to work on. They will read the book and do quite a detailed study of it, looking for inconsistencies, looking for any unusual things that you may have put in there, small details like someone's eye colour changing, but equally they will be looking at it with such fresh eyes that if there are things that they don't understand, they will raise them, because effectively they're a reader. They're looking at it and saying, this person's done this, I don't understand why, you haven't explained the rationale, you haven't explained their process, their thought process for this. What is it they're doing? So it's really good to have someone look at it at quite a detailed level and edit it at quite a granular level and say, right, we need to really get down to this and make sure it all hangs together in a consistent way so that it makes sense. So when a reader first picks it up for the first time, they're not lost. Obviously there has to be a balance. You don't want to spoon feed your readers every single detail. You want them to be intrigued and want them to keep reading, but at the same time you don't want to have so much information close to your chest that they don't know what's going on. So you have to find that balance, and with working with your agent, your editor, and then a copy editor, you can find that balance somewhere and get it right, because these are three people who know what they're doing, they're very experienced, and combining with your own knowledge of the story, you can find a good compromise and say, okay, I can see this doesn't make much sense. There's more of it in my head than is on the page. I'll give a little bit more detail here. The next phase is the proofread. This is where they will send you a printed version of the book laid out on A4 paper with 2 pages on each side of A4, so you can see how it'd look as a book. And this is where you'd look through for very small changes. You're not changing the characters or the story, the plot at this phase. This is spelling, punctuation and grammar. Very small things. Other people are looking at it as well, and so you're just trying to find any of those small things that you've missed because you've read the book so many times. Sometimes things slip through the net. And equally, when a book is printed, it sometimes gets missed, but this is the last stage when you have a chance to do that. You might also do an interview that could go in the back of the book. They would ask you for a dedication, or if you have a bibliography, that would go in the book, and this is when you would look at something like that. The final phase is the advanced reader copy. These could be digital versions, or they could be an actual short print run of a physical book that isn't the absolute final version, that will be sent out to people for reviews, for cover quotes to other authors that hopefully say nice things about the book, and that will go on the front cover when they do the final printed version so that people will be interested and pick up your book. Okay, so those are all the main phases. Hopefully that's given you a better idea of what happens if you go down the traditional publishing route with a book. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions about any of that, put them in the comments below and I will try and answer them. I've given a more detailed version of everything I've talked through today in my ebook. That is available on Kindle. There's a link down below as well if you want to check out that. It has information about this and lots of other practical writing advice, so take a look. And I'll be back again soon with another video.